Okay,
We're not stopping it.
all the perspectives that there are out there.
okay.
Absolutely. So now, moving forward, spring, you haven't defined spring yet.
Spring goes to June.
Spring goes to June 20th this year.
20th.
Yeah.
But we would like to have some sort of open house. I don't know that we've really figured out what we'd be presenting at the open house or how it would work, but we really feel like we need to be out in the community talking.
So are we thinking about these in conjunction with the open houses we're planning for grade reconfiguration and kind of partnering this with those, or?
It is not advisable, so this needs to be something completely
We don't think
separate.
we'll be ready.
And
That's
it
why we
definitely
say
won't be
we'll
ready
spring.
by.
Because I know those are already calendared in March, so we're thinking
Oh,
something
no.
like
Oh, yeah,
that.
March.
That is not spring. It's late winter.
So,
Late.
for
Draw
the
the
survey, I won't read every single bullet point, but we kind of looked at what Seattle did for their survey, and we really thought that their, top bullet points there were smart ways of looking at all the different areas that people might have considerations. And so we modeled kind of a similar.
We plagiarized.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery.
So, we looked at,
More marketing.
we asked people what they thought their academic considerations would be. Maybe there would be staff members that would have answers or considerations in that. Equity, health and safety, before and after school activities, athletics, transportation, and then community use. And so we're hoping, the survey doesn't really have a, checkbox or pick a button. It's very much comment driven. So we're really, really hoping that people have comments.
What else are we
What are we
missing?
missing?
Each
Here's
of
some
those
examples of
categories.
things that we've tried to think of.
Right.
What else could you be, could you think of that would impact your family or
Because
school?
for each of our models, we went through this
Yes.
exercise and tried to come up with considerations, how this time change would affect academics, health and safety, all of that
That's where the pain
ourselves.
points
But
came
we
in.
know we can't think of everything. so-
Right.
And, and eventually, we'd love to know then, the community, where's the priority?
Right.
What's the most important thing to you?
Right.
And it's also gonna be a lot of
Comments.
Did the task force have any specific conversation around pulling out cost as its own item for people to respond to? Because when I remember from the initial survey we did, is that there were high levels of support, and then when you overlaid a cost factor on that, the support dropped.
I think,
So,
Yeah.
and I think we assumed that there's cost in each one.
But I think we have
Actually,
financial impacts, aren't we
Cost and
missing?
financial impact is.
is in there.
Was
okay.
it-
It is.
It's like number 8.
I thought it was there.
Yeah, I think we missed, yeah.
It is cut
Well,
off
I
from
took the
other.
survey and you guys did such a good job. I had a hard time finding comments to put in there. No, it's true. With all the things that you listed, I had a hard time of
Yeah,
thinking
we
something
have
out.
financial.
That's
I
what
just think that's
I
important information.
Yeah.
Just have financial impacts.
So the goal for
What am I
us,
not
once
thinking?
we close the survey, is to collect the information
Where's that guy here?
that we will then try to figure out some way of summarizing the information as a committee, and then try to determine what do we use on top of what we've already identified in the 7 or 8 things that we've identified here. Okay? So let's real quickly go
Yeah, we
through
should speed up, it's almost
the
6.
timeline.
Yeah.
So as you can see, we have our community survey considerations out there that will close this Friday. As Megan said, we have over 3,800 response. We are now sharing our best attempt at the board study session, or the board retreat. As the group talked about in April and May, we want to do some type of community engagement. We're still working on what that community engagement and what we will be sharing with the community. But we also thought once we do a community engagement similar to EDTF, we probably should follow up with the community about what we've heard
Yeah.
and what
Any
we could or
changes or
couldn't
revisions?
incorporate. We hope to do a November study session with the board or some late winter study session with then a January approval, knowing that we have to go through 2 board readings. And the reason this date is significant to us is then once it's approved, or when a plan is approved, then we have to go through the implementation process, which will take us 6, 7 months.
So the January 2017 timeline is really a backward plan.
It's a
Yes,
backward plan.
From what the needs are to
Yes.
gear up for fall
Do the
17.
routes, do
Yes,
the.
So
It's a pretty hard date.
the session,
pretty firm date.
the session you'd be envisioning in November would be, this is the final
Yes.
plan.
This is the final plan.
Right.
Yes.
Okay? On top of that, we want to quickly share just some additional information. So we know the surrounding districts around us are either the board has approved Seattle and Bellevue. However, those districts are unique where their high school students are riding Metro and they're not in-service transportation. As you can see, the other four, North Shore, Lake Washington, Issaquah, Mercer Island, they're still trying to vet through some community process. And these are the districts that are trying to understand the impacts at every single level. And then we haven't heard from the other districts regarding what they're gonna do.
And then our athletics is mostly with Lake Washington and Issaquah, is
Kinko.
Newport, Kinko, I understand,
Bellevue.
but
So.
Newport's from Bellevue.
Yes,
So it's those four from North Shore down to Bellevue.
yes.
Don't call me in
Yes.
that.
One of the comments that on the task force, Yanni is very much into athletics, is that it's not necessarily even field time or anything that may be the limiting factor, it's referees and umpires, that their availability. So even though all these schools may go, the availability of all the referees
It's always
to
something.
So we
coach them is very, yeah.
Exactly.
So maybe we, go ahead, let's skip that. Let's go to, all right?
Okay, yeah.
So, kind of here's our summary and question. So, again, what we want to summarize real quick, additional guidance from the board.
Yes.
That would be really helpful. And we kind of asked some open-ended, we listed some open-ended questions here that may spur the discussion.
So could I just, as I look at these, I have a couple of others that are on my mind or have been on my mind that I just want to know if you've thought about. So models that would put different levels of students on the same buses.
We looked at that.
We looked at that.
High school with elementary.
High school and elementary, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want it or did you reject it?
It was one of the most expensive.
Yeah, it
What
really,
did you want
it
it?
didn't, it wasn't advantageous.
But I think that's Larry's question is what you
Yeah.
want.
We looked at
Yeah,
that.
Yes,
The
we're open
other-
to it.
The other thing I'm curious about, and then kind of we were talking about elementary band and orchestra program, and so what are the impacts of optional programs? I mean, if our Neiman Marcus model, if we go to a Macy's model,
Yes.
or a Kohl's model.
Now you're going down.
It's all
But
on the table.
what
It is on
kinds
the
of,
table.
what kinds of options does that create?
We talked about
And
that.
I think that's, and I think that was a very intentional part of the resolution, which is if this is the driver and everything else is subservient to that. I mean, I understand that creates other tensions, but I mean, and that's probably more maybe a Megan question, but what range of additional possibilities does that open? That's my
We looked at that,
Yes.
we offer quite a lot, and
Yes.
what would it mean if we didn't offer quite a lot?
The part we haven't fully done is we've looked at the routes to route, the bus to love and things. We haven't looked, okay, now that you've got option, 12, what does it do to band? What does it do to football? We have to flush those out. That's why we want to look at those 21, go to 3, and say, okay, let's imagine we pick this one. What would it mean? How would football work? How would band work? And then add specific to say, this one is great on this, but soccer comes harder and
Well,
band has
And
to
you
be
look
in
at
the
band
morning.
too, and you have band changing somewhat with a middle school
Right.
model as opposed to now, and so.
But we need to
If
flesh
we
those
have-
out in
And we
detail.
have dependencies, right,
Yes.
on the other task force as well?
Yes.
Because they're looking through
Through
and
all those,
reviewing
right,
all those
that's perfect.
programmatic,
Well, we're also
recommendations
thinking
that they're coming up with.
Eighth graders, how many, that was our discussion last night, how many eighth graders would perhaps might be going up to high school or whatever.
And then just a couple of the other things that have been rolling around in my head is, and you have it on here, and so that is that whole middle school as adolescents, because many of the districts that were pointed out to us along the way as people who figured out how to make this happen, one of the common ways they made it happen was simply flipping high school and middle school. And so they obviously made a different decision about middle school as adolescents, or perhaps less in need of a later start time and later hours.
We talked about that last night, that do we go with all of the science or some of the science? Because all of the science says it's 11 to 19.
I'm just saying that some of the places who have done what we're struggling to figure out how to do, they've made that compromise.
And I think that's the guidance that we're seeking
Yes.
from the board,
Yes.
is that when you approve the information based on science,
Right.
it was segmented to one
Right.
age
Yeah.
group of science,
Right.
knowing that we've been talking about adolescents.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, one scenario is we have middle school starting at 7:50
right.
as the first one. So you're kind of, the mandate of the board is high school at 8, that's done. But hit middle school as one curriculum, try to make it as close, but we're not at 8, we're at 7:50.
Right.
So is that good
Is that
enough?
okay?
Because I know you need to, right?
Because right now they start at 5.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right, so
And then-
we'd be actually
and then-
making them earlier.
The other thing that's been rolling around in my head as I've been kind of, watching this process unfold is, and some of the models had that, but looking at variable start times by region,
Yes.
which,
I mean, we obviously pulled out Woodinville first
Right.
because it was
that was a
obvious.
three-tier model and that became quite expensive, but it creates other complications of sharing of staff and sharing of students across programs, but does it, again, open up other possibilities?
We actually did the four-tier
P
model, we
model,
just separated
Yes.
Woodinville as a separate region.
Yes.
And that's
It did
one
its
of
own
the things that they said, ooh, the cost was way
Yes.
too high.
Okay.
Because we were at, somewhere between 8 million up to 14 million. And
Actually,
And
20
we did
million
try-
in some.
We did try and look at like an
Yeah.
Inglemore feeder pattern with elementary schools and the junior highs and
Yes.
try and model it
Yes.
routes.
So was that one 20
Yeah.
million? Because it's like, it could be, we're negotiating here, maybe we get to 12, right? That's good enough, right?
Are we negotiating right now?
That's the part of the part we need
That's
from you
the-
guys,
We
right?
didn't know what the
So-
realistic cost number
I
was.
just wanna, and I'll shut up now, I just wanted to make sure that the things that have been brought up in my head are kind of.
No, we vetted
He's
through
watching
it.
the clock. He's watching.
I know, but.
Yeah.
what do we do?
So let me, because I do have questions,
Yep.
but again, are you guys looking for informal feedback? Do we want to just kind of take turns talking on some of these points?
That would be helpful.
I think, yeah, that would be helpful.
As opposed to, okay, we've all 5 reached the same.
Oh, no, just
No, no,
a
no.
box.
I don't think you're gonna do
Feedback
that
is
at
awesome.
15
So,
minutes.
so can we talk about scoping costs, in terms, so when you say additional costs for transportation and 3-tier costs more than 4-tier, because, 1 million versus 20 million is, as a big difference in our opinion, probably.
Right.
So the ranges were anywhere from $500,000 to $10 million, somewhere around there. 10 to
Here,
20 of them.
That's a good, really
Yeah.
tiny spreadsheet to look at.
But
that's
just
just
kind of, that kind of helps though, just kind of, when we're talking about additional
There's-
costs, it kind of helps us.
Down
but
kind
there's
of
like
towards
a-
the bottom there, the
Yeah.
bottom line
There's
where
an
the, you
outlier
see
that's
it.
real a lot, but a lot of them were just like a few.
Around 12 million, somewhere between I would say between the 10 and 15 million
Yes.
dollar
And
mark.
For
There
operating
were-
costs, for general fund.
To po-
Operating cost of general.
Well, to point out, when we modeled the new boundaries,
Yes.
using the population we have now, which is
Yes.
our best
Yes.
estimate, this is all
Yeah.
we can do. Our operating costs went up just for having
that.
that
Yes.
to 8 million.
Yeah.
Right, because.
So that's our base.
Base is
And our best
Right.
guess at our base, so
Yes.
then we look at costs on top of that.
Yeah.
was
As
0.5 to
being
10
late
million on top of your base.
Yes. So our base was somewhere around $8 million.
The new base.
The new base.
Yeah.
And then it was going, somewhere between
Right.
$500,000 to $10 million of
Can I
our
go back to
base.
the 3 top ones, and do we have numbers for those? I mean, that could be.
No, I don't think the board,
You
I
get
think we're okay, we don't need
yeah,
exact
okay,
numbers, but it'll
Right.
help us answer your question,
Yeah.
because I'm seeing a range from 8 million to 12 million.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a $4 million.
This is the ones we focused on.
That's what we
Right.
figured. There were
So-
ones that were 14
But
million.
here's,
and,
yeah,
you know.
here's one that has 6.
right, but I think if I can move it towards,
Yeah.
if you're asking, is the board willing to spend $2 to $3 million on the stack time task force?
Yes.
I think the board could say, we could each kind of say, I'd
Yeah.
be willing to spend $2 to $3 million, I'm way opposed to it, like
Yeah.
it's been 4
And
million,
we
yeah.
can't say the state won't, we can't say the state won't reimburse.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
that's.
We don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
Right, exactly,
Worst
but,
case scenario,
but
but
just,
they
I'm
do.
comfortable or not
Yeah.
comfortable with
Because
that
the
2 to 3
membership of the
million, yeah.
equation, we spent 12, they might say, here's 12, or they might say, here's 8.
Exactly, sure.
So
Okay.
if we can maybe do like for ease of for time, 3 to 4 million And what's your consideration of adolescents? Is it 11 to 19 or 15 to 19?
Okay.
So do
those
you want
two
the
would
when
also-
is the earliest and when is the latest?
Yeah, if you can do that, so I think those three that you're willing to share today would be fabulous. I mean,
But I think,
So,
I think we can give our thoughts, but I think we gotta come back on the dais next
Definitely.
time and
Yeah, I think
talk.
we'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we can give you a thumb in the wind stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think
And
you're
we'll
also
have-
gonna
we'll
wanna
have
look at
him-
the survey results.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was gonna
Exactly,
say.
no, for sure,
Right.
Yes.
100%.
Okay, so I heard you want to know about 3 to 4 million if we think middle school is
Yeah.
adolescents. What's the other question you
I
have?
think
When is
that, I
the
think
earliest
that,
you
I
can
think
start
what
a
we're
labor?
trying to figure out is what is the board comfortable with as far as additional costs above the current base. We're not saying a number.
Yeah.
I think you guys need to come up with that range or number. I think what we are also seeking is what is too early?
Mm-hmm.
What is too late?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the region that we live in, it's going to be dark in the morning, it's going to be dark at night. And somebody has to go first,
In the dark.
and somebody has to go last.
Right, be walking in the dark in the morning.
So-
Do you have
or
a
in the
kindergarten
evening.
waiting bus at 6:20 in the morning? Or do you have high school starting at 10 a.m.? I mean,
Yeah.
these are extreme, but that's kind of like,
I think the other thing that, as Anna asked, is are you considering adolescents, from the science perspective, this age, 11, what is the range that you're sort of looking at when you're defining adolescence?
what about the
Just 15, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just truly high school.
I would also ask, maybe it's, tell me, the last one. What do you expect? Do you expect us to tell you, here's what you should do, or here's a menu of 3, pick one of those 3? What do you expect us to give you?
I want you to find the perfect solution. That's what it is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it in my back pocket.
Here's the magic pill.
Once we have
Lure.
better feeling for
Yeah.
your parameters, there may be.
You'll get
Yeah,
close.
it's gonna help us
Yeah.
narrow it down.
Yeah.
So maybe we can each take, I'm not trying to run this shit.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
wait, no, but
Yeah.
it's, but we are technically running behind, so I'll kick off.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful?
What did you want to say, Larry?
I was just gonna say, it might be helpful to think about costs as what's a factor or a percentage from baseline
Yes.
that's, seems reasonable. So is it 20%, is it 15%, is it 25%, you know? I mean, I think that's maybe, rather than getting fixated on numbers, try to look at a scale.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay. Well, and then, because also,
gets blown every
so, and again, I think, I want to predicate my responses in that this is, given an hour, 15 minutes worth
yeah.
of thought, so,
Sure.
and I extremely respect what you guys have done, so I'm totally open to suggestions if this causes further stumbling, okay? So in terms of my personal cost threshold, I was thinking, I started with the numbers, so if 8 million's our baseline, I personally don't think this is without studying anything
Yeah,
else,
yeah.
but if we go beyond 2 million above that, we're just gonna have to start taking from other places. So easily, and in 2 million, we may still have to take from other places, so if you're,
saying 25% essentially.
yes, so I'm saying 25% probably is where I'm falling. Adolescent age, I do agree that middle school should be taken into consideration, but I think when adolescence kicks in, without having the studies in front of me, I'm willing to consider the 750 option, since it's a little more flex, but I appreciate the fact that you did take careful time to study that, and I'm open to that suggestion. What is too late, what is too early is a hard one for me to do on the spot, I have to be honest,
That's fine.
because I really want to chew on that one. Although I am leery about the darkness. Although if this helps, I'm more leery about disrupting daycare for families than I am about the dark. If that helps. So making sure an older sibling is home to help with working families, that's a little, I'm not happy about the darkness, but I'm more worried about that. And then efficiency rating, I'm personally, that wasn't on our verbal list, but it's on this bullet point. Efficiency rating, you know, the policy right now says 90%, and we've been hitting 100, so I feel like we have some give to give there anyways. And if, you know, an extra 2% would help you guys, I'm more than willing to talk about that. And then, in terms of expectations for options, I think in the past, you know, like we had to just think about options for where to put kindergartners, and we had a couple to choose from, and I think we were able to do that. We were able to, if it helps you guys to give us a couple options and give us the pros and cons of each, I think that's something that we could process.
I see start time as a public health issue, and so I think we should spend the money it takes to get to healthy. So I'm not gonna put the cost constraint. I think we can get to healthy and it costs what it costs. So if it was asbestos, if it was smoking indoors, we'd get rid of it and it's gonna cost what it costs. So I'll probably be at the high end of willing to accept the cost to solve the issue. I think high schoolers are clearly adolescents, and so they should be, and I don't think 8 o'clock is late enough. I think it should be 8:30 to 9:30. So, and we may want to come back as a board and revise that. So I don't like 8 a.m. for high school. I think it should be later. And similar, I see middle school, and I think I've seen enough to know that adolescence starts sometime in middle school. But if we have to make trade-offs and have middle school go earlier than high school, I can live with that trade-off. If we get middle school as late as high school, that's self-appropriate with the research, I do that. So if there's a press point there, middle school preferred later, but if it can't go later for all the other constraints, I could live with that. Too early and too late, I like what Issaquah's doing. I think nobody before 8 and nobody starting after 9:30. I think those are really useful. I know they have some different constraints in the 2 tiers and some other things.
So that's 8 to 4, I just want to clarify, because right now we end at 4:10. So do you?
I'm probably more fine on the end times based that, yeah, so I'm ish.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not hard on that, but I think in that zone. I think childcare, I would agree with Amy, is a real big issue. I don't think we should make it, though, just limited to the family-provided childcare. I think there's a lot of other mitigating, the community schools and other kinds of things we might kind of find ways to do with childcare, but I think childcare is something, especially from an equity perspective, we really have to come up with a thoughtful plan, but I think there's lots of options for that. So I don't think that should be a stumbling block, but I think it should be a part of the implementation plan, is how do you make sure that families who currently have a childcare situation have a childcare situation, no matter how it gets configured. Does that make sense?
No, because that means you have 8,000 people we have to figure out childcare for.
We don't have.
No, we're not.
But I'm fine with saying that is my preference. Yes, I would like to have a childcare situation, and we have these school buildings, and so some families may work super early. The school buildings are there, and we can provide community services. If they don't have the daycare at home, our schools are open and able to be lit and warm and safe. And so that's just my preference, is that the child care piece be resolved, because I don't think we should put in something place that creates a child care problem for our families. Thank you for reading.
What about efficiency rating and deliverable question?
I don't care about the efficiency rating nearly as much as I care about the public health, so for me that's much lower, and then the other one,
What
sorry.
kind of option packaging helps you?
My sense is, I think, quite honestly, I think you should look for the best that you could get and sell that package. That's my sense. I don't think you should bring us a bunch of alternatives. I think there will be pains, and I think you should try and find the best you can come up with, and then we work together to sell that.
Best option.
And to mitigate it. A single best option. But maybe touch base with us one more time, July-ish.
So, I don't want to give you guys a bunch of different things. I'm trying to think what would stop me from voting for something. Where would I put a wedge in an action, which tends to be something that I know frustrates everybody. And so I appreciate you asking the board to participate in this. Yay, this is awesome. and really trying to vet out right now what those things are. So thank you so much. And I'm trying to really sit here in this 10 minutes, so I really do think we need to regroup. And I do think we need the survey results, like Larry said, and regroup, whether it's on the dais and we have the discussion and we say, here's kind of our recommendation. But, so the only thing that I can think of that I would just go, no way, I really think isn't anything except, of course, I just think no one here is gonna make transportation $20 million, so I'm not worried about it. I know the people at the table, like Ryan and Larry, and I'm not too worried about that. So, I don't, expectation for deliverables, I more agree with Amy. I love having options. So I would rather, because I think the frustrating thing is if you give us one and one or two board members don't agree with that, let us argue, wrestle with the 2 to 3 options and us have to fight each other versus saying to you guys, I don't like, I just think it's so much better to give us a range of options and let us battle each other. In a nice way, not confrontational
Debate it amongst
way.
ourselves.
Yeah, let us debate it amongst ourselves and give us the reasons why, just like we did with the kindergarten. And I just think it's way.
So can I ask a clarifying question? You said there was sort of one thing that would be the showstopper.
I'm honestly trying to, it's hard for me to think, and I'm not a quick processor, so I might go home tomorrow. And I'll try to communicate it with you if I do. I don't think well in the moment, but I don't see something, I was gonna say transportation was in $20 million. I don't see, the efficiency rating, I think we could go to 88 or 87 if it's not, hear what I'm saying, if it's not tied to funding and then we loop back around and try to get the system more efficient. Because I think we'll always have a lower efficiency rating. I realize we have a board policy, it's a different discussion. So to be clear of what I'm saying, right at this very moment, I don't see a stopper for me. If there is, I will loop back around and touch base with
About adolescents.
somebody here. I think it is starting at age 11, but I think we set this to be high school. So
Wiggle room with middle school.
yeah, whether it's 750 for them or, I do agree with what Kent says. I think this is a public health issue. So I do agree with that, and I think we should try to make it the most, but I just really appreciate everything that you guys have done. So, and I promise to come back if I think of something. Within a week or whatever.
So, thank you for all the work. It's obvious that a lot of thought has gone into this and will be more required, so thank you. Just running down my thoughts. Additional funds, I do feel that start time is important, and to make that change from the status quo, if there's a cost associated with it, I think it's worth spending money to get a better solution for later start times for the adolescents. Question I had, I don't know if we know the answer, does the boundary change affect our efficiency in the current calculations? Do we go below 100%?
Actually, I don't believe it does when we ran the models.
Well, we have to consider boundaries, new high school, and we're also assuming all students will be going to their school in their home boundary.
Yeah.
And kindergartens all day.
Add efficiency to that. Okay, so that's, thank you for that. Again, there's room to grow on efficiency. We make a change for the health of the students and we lose some efficiency points and we still get 100% funding. I think that's a fine trade-off. I prefer to get the 8 o'clock start for middle school and high school. You know, if I did have to compromise, I would compromise on middle school earlier than 8, but it'd be nice if they could be after 8. To that extent, option 20 has the elementary kids going first, then middle school, then high school. I like that idea of the high schoolers going last because that's the cohort that has the greatest sleep needs. I think that makes sense to have them go later, as long as that works with other criteria, and school sports and things like that. The earliest start time I think is 8 for high school, and middle school I think it's great to go a little earlier for elementary.
A little, what's a little?
I mean, 7:50 on option 20 seems a little bit earlier. I mean, that's what's on option 20. What's the current early start middle school?
8:05.
8:05.
So this is 15 minutes early for the elementary kids. 15 minutes darker. So,
The latest.
willing to go 15. I think that's for elementary.
A 9:50 start time for elementary school?
I saw 7:50.
I know, but like the opposite end.
Oh, we go later.
Well, our
Our
latest. I think when we talk about latest, we're talking about end time of the
Right.
day.
Yes.
When we release that late bell,
4:20 is.
4:25 is
Right,
what we
so
end
then,
up
but
at.
that's what you end up with, yeah.
Yeah.
The end, when elementary school's ending at 5 or 4:30.
I was looking at option 20 where elementary's even the late elementary has been at 250.
Right,
where they're at
but what's your threshold?
But high school
on the
is
other?
still getting out at
Late
4:20-ish.
420.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that's really, someone's gotta end, so the last tier, how late can that be? is what
I
we
think
really
having
want.
that research data,
Yeah.
sorry, is gonna be really important, because if parents, if we have a big, large group that says, I'm not gonna buttress against that, so
Well,
I
you
wanna.
will, you will, regardless of.
Yeah, no, whatever choice you make.
If I have 2,000 parents saying, if we get a survey where it says this is the absolute priority, is what I'm saying.
So look at this later and internalize like, oh, this means that,
Yeah.
because it
Does
takes
that
a
make
while to
sense,
really.
Ryan?
Because
Yeah.
if elementary school kids get out at 4:25 and they have an hour bus ride, it's a kindergartner on a bus.
Their parents are gonna be bad.
Right.
Well, and their
So
brains
I'm
are
So
not
I just wanna make
free.
sure David gets a chance to finish.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
I guess what I'd like to say is, I think the three models that you have, you all said nobody's happy with either of the three. I think we're going around in circles saying there can be more money spent. So I think what we want to do is try and come up with the next best option that spends a little bit of money, that solves some of these problems in these three options. And I agree with Kimberly, I think having 2 or 3 of the best options that have different trade-offs, and then let the board work through those trade-offs and find the one that they're most comfortable with is a better strategy than trying to just narrow it down, force it down to one. So, and again, I'm more concerned about start times than the end times, if I had to prioritize the two.
Okay, so for me, a deal breaker would be middle school. I think if we're doing this for health of teenagers, middle school is teenagers, and we need to be part of this, so I'm a little concerned about moving them earlier than what they already are. So I would get very nervous if we, 7:50 feels pretty close, but much earlier than that, I would not vote for that. Funding, I'm with Amy, right around 25%. I know us as a board, we'll have a new thing probably in about 2 hours. That we're gonna add to our budget. So, as much as we say we'll give it all we want, to get it done, the reality is we have a limited budget and we have many things that we want to do. No elementary school in the dark,
Which end?
either end. They can go to school in the dark in the morning, or I mean, they're,
It is
I don't
now.
think that's,
well, I
Oh,
know.
at least they're not before dark.
Yeah,
now.
at least
Yeah.
before they get, I'm one of the late school and we're at the end of the bus ride, and so it's just starting to get dark when our kids get off.
So just to
the-
clarify, Sandy, do you mean, let's not make that last tier later than it already is?
Yeah, not while they're being a whole lot later.
Okay.
And I certainly don't want them earlier, a whole lot earlier.
For elementary?
For elementary only, that's only.
Okay.
High school and
So
middle school, you're
elementaries
okay
and
with it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the facts after, right?
Yeah.
This is what helpful,
Right.
let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if you guys do a model and anything that this doesn't work, then I don't think we have to wait till November.
No.
Yeah.
And so, and then efficiency rating, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I heard something about what happens when under 90 and that.
If
I think we
makes
just
sense.
need.
It's
it
a
sounds-
review.
Yeah, it
It's a review.
sounds,
Right now, we have to
oh,
start to
there's a
look
lot
at
of
the money.
concerns, but it
Yeah.
sounds like we've got like bigger wiggle room, and I think the options, I'm gonna, my options is, I don't want anybody coming in and then we all go, nah, that's a terrible idea, give us some options.
Okay.
I have 2 other things that come up as we've had some of these conversations, and I don't know if it's appropriate to have them here, but one of them is online evening or summer classes as a way to shorten the days, an alternative academic delivery, and or for sports teams. So very few of our sports seasons go across the semester, some of them do. But thinking about, for the athletes, having a 5-period on-campus day, and then being gone the other thing, and then whether that is an online class, whether it's a summer class. So just thinking creatively about that, you still would have to run the buses at the normal time, but just that more is probably more detailed than you're at this point. The other thing is from the pediatrics report, really talked a lot about what I'll call counseling for the activity load of kids, basically time management, and we have lots of children that fill up their day with too many things. And some people are like, well, if we shift it this way, then how am I gonna get in this lesson, or how am I gonna get in this other activity? How do I do yearbook and band and sports and, you know, and feed children in Africa? It's like you can't, and sleep 10 hours or 9 hours. And so that notion, I think building that in, that was one of the strongest recommendations of the pediatric thing, is if we don't give counseling to our families and children, how they monitor their time, then just changing the start time. The other thing I think that's related to that is, are we gonna allow, and maybe the board will have to wrestle with this, allow prior to start time activities, 0 period?
Yeah.
And when you do that, did you just lose all the gains that you had? And are we and do we have to make a choice that we're not expecting our kids to do 9 periods worth of activity, school plus the other activities?
But we had discussions about 0 periods, and if school started at 9:50 for high schoolers, then you'd still have a 0 period before 8 o'clock. So, or after 8 o'clock, sorry.
Right.
So, yeah, so there's options.
Right, so keep, yeah, I know.
It's optional, right? It's, as, now it's mandated that you start at 7:20, so it's a different.
So we'll allow unhealthy choices on an option.
Well,
So, but I'd say
That's a life choice.
that's deterrent,
You're
right?
not gonna.
I
you're not
understand, I
gonna-
understand, but that's, right,
Yeah.
right, but
You're not
that's
gonna-
the point, as you go through. So those are
So-
just, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, you guys are awesome.
We have folks join us.
I know, that's why it's like.
Yeah.
So weird, I just.
And feel free to ask us questions or contact us.
Absolutely.
No, your work is incredible.
I'm
So, Sash,